Welcome to HR Studio Podcast. Through bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond, we invite you to listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio Podcast is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com.
Welcome, everyone, to HR Studio Podcast. I'm Denise Yosefat, your host for today's episode. Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to explore the topic of managing the changing workplace expectations of different generations, getting employees to have lifelong loyalty for a company. So really a fascinating topic. Joining us for this conversation is our thought leader for today, Lee Caraher. Lee is the CEO of Double Forte, a 15-year-old public relations and digital marketing firm. Lee is also an acclaimed author and recognized expert in creating high-performing, positive workplaces. She has published Millennials in Management and the Boomerang Principle, books that discuss how to inspire employees to be loyal and how to adapt the workplace in such a way that baby boomers, millennials, and Gen Xers and Zers can work together effectively. So welcome, Lee.
Denise, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be with you.
So before we begin in earnest, I have to say I've read about your spectacular laugh.
Oh, well, that's not. Well, there you go.
There we go. I had to do that before we get into the serious topics of today.
Well, it gets me out of trouble every once in a while, that's for sure. Because it's so loud. People are like, oh, Lee must be in the room.
Well, that's wonderful. So I want to start out today by, asking you about, the younger generation often wants so much, so fast.
Yes.
And will jump ship if they don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can companies deal with that?
I think people jump ship when their expectations aren't met. So the key there is to set expectations and have everybody aligned on them. And I think I'm the last year of Boomer. My Boomer and Gen X compatriots, we had already a set understanding of what the workplace would be and what, how long it would take to move up and all these kinds of things. And those really got blown up out of 2008 implosion in the economy. So, and what we didn't show up with lots of understanding and lots of, sort of waited our turn as boomers. The market was booming and there were so many of us who just waited our turn and the opportunity came. Not true for Gen Xers, not true for Gen Y, millennials, and definitely not true for Gen Z. So I think what has happened is that these preset norms got blown up, and then what we didn't do as older people is adjust our way of working to those things being blown up. So what we haven't done well, and where disappointment really happens a lot, is when we haven't said, here's the expectation for this work, here's the expectation for how long it takes for some people to get through this, and here's different kinds of job paths you might take, left or right. It's not just, I think the kiss of death is just telling people, here's the one ladder that you will take for your life. Millennials and Gen Z could care less about that. They want to understand possibility.
Yeah.
So when you can talk about possibility, so here's this entry-level job, and in this entry-level job, here's your role, and here's why it's important in the company. And here's why it's important for so many different career paths you might take. It's foundational. So yes, you might be doing things over and over again, because that is work. We all do things over and over again. And so that can be disappointing for some people. But understand that everything you learn in this first year, 18 months, 2 years, 6 months, whatever it is, It's foundational and you can take anywhere. So as long as we set the expectation and explain what people are getting out of these entry-level jobs, I think that we have a better chance of getting people on the same board and not sort of like showing up 3 months later going, I really don't like all this, rote work. It's not very valuable. There is no invaluable work. We do not hire people to do stuff we don't need to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have definitely not done a great job. And I am my first culprit here of explaining why that entry-level job is so important. So when we set expectations better, we have better results and people stay longer.
Is there anything other than setting expectations that can foster that kind of loyalty to stay?
Oh my gosh. Well, we all show up so we all have work, right? We have jobs and companies that have purposes and have a market to serve. And then we show up as humans, right? And humans, we are not checkbox people, And I think HR gets such a bad rap, right? Because they're forced to comply, to provide compliance and a lot of research and all that data. And those data in the past, it's always been check marks, right? And so instead of really acknowledging, which all HR people do, they acknowledge that people are complicated, right? But the system hasn't really allowed us to acknowledge how non-conforming humans are. So I think the other piece of that is we have a job, we have teams, individuals, roles, companies, and then individuals show up and they don't, they may tick the box on, yes, I want to be an account executive or whatever it is. But they also have all these other interests. They also have all these other aspirations, but we never ask them. Like, what else are you interested in? It might not be on the resume, probably isn't if they're trying to fit into a certain job. So when we can help those people achieve their own goals in the structure of our companies, it might be that they have they're in one department for a few years and they move to another department and then you provide training and then there's an externship, provide the variety that people would get outside of your work, inside of your office. And then of course, you might wake up one day and say, I want to be a nurse. Well, you're in a PR firm. I cannot help you with that. But what
a little out of our scope.
Right, a little out of our scope. But if you have that conversation, like if you have that good relationship, right, you're having good conversations with your people, then you can, if they show up with, I really want to be a nurse. Wait, it shouldn't be a surprise unless you don't know them.
Yeah.
And B, how can I help you become a nurse is the question to ask. And maybe the answer is, well, I have to go back to school, then I have to work. Can I change my hours? Yeah, we'll figure that out. Or they want to do, they're in a marketing firm and they're not in the video department, but they want to be a videographer, but the video guy won't let them do anything. Well, let's fix that, right? So the more you can help people achieve their goals and the more you can help people be realistic about and help them learn, the more people are going to understand that you're helping them and that you understand that your success is based on their success, which is fundamentally empirically true, right?
Yeah.
If our companies aren't full of people who are doing great stuff, then we're not doing great. Yeah. So that's really the piece on loyalty that I think is important, because really showing up to work is not a loyal act. Showing up to work, which is not a skill also, but you have to do it, right? You're getting paid. When you're getting paid for work, that is not loyalty to stay, right? You're getting paid, it's a transaction. Loyal acts happen when you don't have to do them, right? When you're out in the world, you've been in the company for 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, years, and you want to do something totally different and you're out in the world and you have a new job and that new company does a pivot, right? And they need a partner and you go, oh my gosh, the best partner would be Double Forte. Let me call Lee. Yeah. I don't have to call Lee, right? Or you're out there and say, you know what? I saw that Double Forte needs a person. Denise would be awesome. Let me have Denise talk to Lee. That's a loyal act. Loyal acts are not showing up for work that you're getting paid for.
Right. It's really above and beyond.
It's above and beyond. And I think that actually the most loyal thing an employee can do is leave when they're no longer inspired or satisfied with the work that they have to do at the company. And they've tried everything, right? They've tried. And that's the most loyal act you can do as an employee. is not get paid for something you're not doing.
Right.
So I'm on sort of this mission of, let's have great conversations. Let's understand our people, because so much waste is in companies because people are grinding on the things. I wish I could do that. I wish I could do this. Why can't I? No. And all that is inefficiency. And all that inefficiency is profit down the drain. And if we had a conversation that said, Denise, what do you know, I noticed that you were making a greeting card at your desk. You're so artistic. I had no idea. Well, yes, I am artistic. I really like to do this. It's sort of my side thing. Oh, would you like to do that here?
Ah.
Can
So
you
really investing in the employees?
investing in the employee?
Yeah, investing in their interests.
In their interests, because we're all human, right? And this generation, meaning millennials and Gen Z, they know better than any generation before them that, you know, you can't count on the man. And in this case, I'm the man, I guess, because I have one company. You can't count on us. The 2008 proved that and since then has proved it over and over and over again, right? Millennials and some Gen Z have parents, 10 million of them lost their jobs in 2008, 2009. Even though they've been loyal, even the people who had the hardest time getting jobs again are people who'd been at their company 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Sure.
Right? And so
that's
they
the
told their kids, right? They told their kids, don't stay at a company.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, 8 years later, those same people are like, why are these kids leaving? So, you know, it's all tied together.
That's the argument you get from the younger generation is companies aren't loyal to us, so why should we be loyal to them? So, you know,
Right.
How do you counter that argument?
Well, if a company is not interested in you, they're not loyal to you, right? And you can't, and a company cannot, you cannot, as a CEO, guarantee a job. You can't. You don't know if, or a project manager or a VP, you don't know if you're going to, you know, so in our business, it's a service business. Well, what if a client gets, we're a smaller firm. So we work with companies who may get bought, who might go public, who may go under, right? I can't guarantee that all those three things aren't going to happen with the clients who are paying us a certain amount of money every month, which then funds people. I cannot guarantee work. I can guarantee experience, and I can guarantee culture, and I can guarantee that we're going to do our best, but no CEO in the world can guarantee work. Can't. So what you can guarantee, though, is that you're going to do your best, and that you're going to provide opportunity, and that you're going to have conversation. That's what you can guarantee. So that's loyalty there. So I think that if people are saying you're not loyal to me, and you've done all those things, you've had all these conversations, then it's a conversation around, let's reset the bar on what is loyal, right? Things I can't control. Most of us can't control much, right? The key is to have great values, have them well understood, have good conversations, and then not, you know, anything you do as a leader should not be a surprise to your people, right? If something bad happens and I respond as the CEO, all right, well, okay, we just lost half of our revenue. We can hang on for 8 weeks while we try to replace this, but if we don't do that, blah, 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 right?
Right.
You have to have the conversations. But if your employees are surprised by your response, that's on you. That is on you.
Right. So in terms of building a resume, and you hear this a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's not good to have just one company. And you brought that up before as,
Yes.
How does someone get hired if they've only had experience at one company? How does that, it almost flies in the face of loyalty.
Yeah.
So how do you answer that?
Well, we have several employees who this is their first job and they're still with us. And I keep saying, oh, they're going to leave, and they never leave. But what they do is change their jobs. And what they do is keep learning. And what they do is change their roles. So you might be able to stay in a company for your whole career, but never have the same job, right? I have a very good friend who was at the Fed for 20 years. 20 years at the Fed.
Wow.
Which is not a public, that's a private organization. But he didn't have a job more than 3 years. Every 3 years, he changed his job, moved around, moved up, and he managed his career within the structure of the Fed. He's 45, so he's been there almost his whole career, right? He managed his career within the structure of the Fed to have different jobs, different roles all the time. Is still recruited all the time. he's not less desirable but he didn't stay in the same job. And I think that's the key, right? How do you make sure you're learning all the time, moving, and how do you describe yourself on your resume, in your LinkedIn, to show that evolution of learning? I mean, I think one of the problems with resumes is it says, how many years did you have that title? Well, titles are challenging, right? Titles don't change very often.
Right.
If you are, you might be a director for 10 years, and that was what he was bucking up against. So he just changed his title every 3 years because he was wanting to show evolution. And I think that, if you're working in contribution management, you can figure ways out to do that. So you can show, you update your resume or you update your LinkedIn, even though you're the same job, same company, whatever it is, same title, but you're demonstrating that you're doing more things. And I think that's the key.
Right. So certainly setting expectations, giving people room to grow,
yes,
helping them with their interests and goals. Was there a fourth one I missed?
Well, I think the other piece is that is making sure people are, that only works, right, if it's working. Meaning, you can't just be a place where it's just a sandbox of learning. There's work to get done. And you have to have a high standard of that work, right? We're not dealing with mediocrity here. We all should be striving to be in the top 20%. No, obviously, by definition, only 20% can be in the top 20%, right? But we should be striving for that. So, the grow mentality, have I grown this year? Have I learned something this year? What is different this year than last year is what can really propel you to help you propel your company. And any job you have today, if you have the same title in 3 years, your job's going to be very, very different. I mean, I'm in public relations. Nothing has changed more in the last decade than how people communicate. So, our business has transformed, meaning the industry, 3 or 4 times since my company was started 17 years ago. So it's always learning, right? Relevancy is the key, being relevant. And as you get older, ageism is real, in San Francisco particularly, it feels very real. And, how do you stay relevant? Relevant. And the more relevant you are, the more important you are, the bigger role you can have, no matter where you are.
The relevancy and showing adaptability.
Absolute, persistence, relevancy, and flexibility, because change, they always say change is constant. Well, change is constant to the X in this world today, right? And I just had a woman yesterday at my company say, I don't like all this change, Lee. And she had just been promoted to vice president. So she's seeing things from a different, she's getting a lot more information now, right? And I'm like, and I took her back to the last 2 years and I showed her where everything had been changing virtually all the time. And she goes, I know, I just didn't see it before. Well, you're ready for this. I wouldn't have promoted if you weren't ready for this, but you got to get comfortable with the fact that you have the solid foundation so that whatever comes our way, we can manage, right? And it's also important to take stock, right? Every quarter, take stock. Okay, what were our expectations? What didn't get met? Because no expectation, no plan. We write plans all the time, Denise. You probably write plans all the time. As soon as you write a plan, it's out of date, right? So, but it's good to have a plan to know where you should be, where you wanted to be. And then you can explain the variance. If you're just sort of thrown from the hip, good luck to you, right?
So let's talk about the plan and the, let's say a baby boomer, because as we talked a little bit about the millennials jumping ship and the, Gen X and Yers and Zers and, all of the above. But let's talk about the baby boomers who are, you mentioned ageism. And, nowadays they may have someone come in who's much more tech savvy and they need to report to them because they have all these
younger,
you're right. And so how do you foster that sense of, I'm okay with this and I will learn and adapt and, maybe we can mentor each other, or how do you do that?
Yeah. I think that's going to happen more and more because we're all going to be working much longer than we thought, right? I'm 54. How old am I? I'm 55. Oh my God.
So am I, by the way.
There's so much going on in my personal life. We're more and more of us are working for people who are younger than us. And and we're also going to be working longer. So the difference is confidence in who you are, right? And a lot of us have to do some work, and this is going to sound really patronizing, but men have a harder time with this than women, is what I've observed. Number one. And then two, you have a lot to offer that young person. That younger person, depending, if they're a healthy human being,
Yeah.
they're not everybody's healthy, meaning, comfortable in their own skin. And if they're healthy, though, a good manager looks to see any value they can get out of anybody, right? And knows that they have to learn. The good news, I think, for older people with younger people now is that in my research around millennials, they expect to lead, but not all the time sometimes. Like anybody can lead in the boat. Well, if you're like rowing a boat, you also have to be rowing at the same time, right?
Right.
But the expectation is that sometimes I'll lead, sometimes I'll be a rowman, sometimes I'll be sometimes I'll be calling it out, row, row, row. May not have been our expectation. Our expectation was you rose to a certain level. That was how it worked. There wasn't a lot of moving around of who's the boss and who's not.
Sure.
And it's much more fluid for the younger generation. So one, understand that too is, you work for a young person. It doesn't really matter. Here's who you work for. What's important for you to do is say, here's what I got. I got 20 years of this. I got 5 years of that. I got this. I've been through this. How can I help you how can I be most valuable to you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you have a lot to offer. If you can get rid of the chips on the shoulders, wherever they are, and you might be working for someone with a chip on his shoulder, but you just have to sort of go through it, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I have. Here's what you may not know about me. I'm happy to be here, excited about this role, and explain why you're excited. Because I think sometimes people think, oh, he wants to have my job. He wish he was bitter because he doesn't have my job. No, he's not bitter at all. This is totally new. It's a lateral move. I was interested in something totally different. I'm excited about bringing this is what I experienced in my company. I hired somebody who worked for somebody who was younger, and that younger person thought, well, what, you think he wants my job? I'm like, no, he doesn't know anything about our job. He wants to learn about it because he's got 30 more years of work to do, and at least, and he's here to learn, and he's here to do, and he's
show his value. He's here to still show his value. Well,
what we know is that people with different experiences have better decisions, right? So embrace it.
Absolutely. This has all been fascinating. I think we're down to our last minute. So
oh, sorry, Denise.
No. I could go on forever. I wish I could. But any recommendations to our audience of rising HR leaders? Any final sentence that they should keep?
I think for HR leaders, your time is now. HR is really coming into its own. It's getting more and more seats at the table. And the more you can do to help people understand that it's not checking the boxes, that you're helping humans reach their goals, the better off you will be. And the more we can move from sort of, the more you move to helping people be better coaches, like most of you probably are, the better it's going to be. So I'm excited about your role in the company because it's going to be more and more important as more and more companies understand that they can't just treat people poorly.
Awesome final thoughts. Thank you again for joining us today. And I want to speak to all our podcast listeners. If you're not a subscriber yet to HR Studio Podcast, you can become one by going to hrstudiopodcast.com. You'll get notified of new episodes, including the one with Lee here. And also there you'll find all our speakers' social handles and contact information, show notes, and more about Lee's books. And Lee has generously offered to give a copy of her latest book, which is The Boomerang Principle, to one of our new subscribers. So thank you, Lee, again for joining us today and making that offer and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise. It was a joy talking with you.
All right, you too. One last laugh.
That's not fair.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Welcome to HR Studio Podcast. Through bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond. We invite you to listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio Podcast is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com.